Sea star and bean plant nutrition, reproduction, and gas exchange. The sea star taxonomy is domain eukaryote, kingdom Animalia, phylum Echinodermata, class Asteroidea, order Paxillocida, family Astropectinidae.
The genus is Astropecten, the species is Astropecten articulatus. And in the bean plant taxonomy, the domain is eukaryote, the kingdom is Plantae, and the phylum is Angiospermae.
The class is Magnoliocida, the order is Fabules, the family is Fabaceae, the genus is Phaseolus, and the species is Phaseolus vulgaris.
The sea star has two ways of reproducing. It can reproduce sexually or asexually. The first way is sexual reproduction. This involves a male and female sea star. The sea star is dioecious, meaning there are male and female versions of it. The male will release sperm into the water, and the female will release her eggs into the water, where they will both meet and become fertilized. The anatomy of the male and female sea stars have the same structures. The only difference is there are eggs in the gonads or sperm in the gonads. The eggs or sperm are pushed from the gonads out of the sea star through the madrepore. It is pushed to the gonads by using the water vascular system. This system is the water pressure that allows the sea star to move, and it also helps to push the eggs and sperm out. Then after the eggs are floating for a little bit, they will hatch and become into a larval form of plankton. They're in this stage for a few months until they finally rest at the bottom of the seafloor as adult sea stars. The next way that the sea star reproduces is asexually. This happens in the form of regeneration. If a sea star loses an arm, it will eventually grow back, but the arm that fell off will also grow into a sea star too. It will only grow if part of the central disc is still intact on the arm. This process can take up to a year, meaning sexual reproduction is much more efficient. The bean plant reproduces within the flower that grows off of it, which has a quality of angiosperm. The flower has both male and female structures, meaning it is monoecious. The pistil receives pollen from the stamens, and the pollen goes to the ovaries, and it fertilizes the ova. The ova then matures into seeds that are either taken by the wind or animals to spread it. There's a process that occurs called double fertilization, where the pollen goes through mitosis and forms into two. It then enters the embryo sac, which contains an egg and two polar bodies. The two pollen cells fertilize the egg and then the polar bodies. The egg grows into a seed, and the polar bodies are used as nutrients while the egg grows. The seed that is resulted from the fertilized ova is in a small protective capsule. Once it is in the ground and has proper growing conditions, the seed breaks through the capsule in a process called germination. It continues to grow, and once it's adult, it gets its leaves and eventually begins to flower, meaning it's ready to reproduce again. Both the sea star and the bean plant express similarities and differences in the way that they reproduce. They're both similar in the way that they both have male and female parts. The difference is that the parts are together in the bean plant and separate in the sea stars. The next similarity is the fertilized egg and seed both mature outside of the plant. For the bean plant, the seed matures in the ground, and for the sea star, the egg matures suspended in the water. Finally, they both have similar life cycles, but the fact that they start off as small fertilized things, grow into adults, reproduce, and eventually die. The difference is that sea stars are able to asexually reproduce and regenerate from a limb that fell off.
Sea stars feed on clams, sponges, oysters, snails, and other small invertebrates. Some species of sea stars also feed on coral. Other species filter feed for small organisms like plankton. Because the sea stars have the capability of capturing food from other organic complexes, the sea star is a heterotroph. When they consume their food, they utilize their capability of expanding their stomach outside of their body to engulf and digest their prey. Sea stars have a unique digestive system with their mouth on the underside and an anus on the upper surface of the sea star. Food can be taken in through the mouth, but the sea stars have a cardiac stomach which can extend through this mouth where food is digested outside of the body. This is accomplished because sea stars have tube feet which are utilized to bring the nutrients into the extended stomach. The sea star's digestive tract consists of a cardiac stomach, a pyloric stomach, digestive gland, pyloric ceca, a small intestine, and an anus. The sea star also has a water vascular system, which is important when receiving nutrients because this allows them to open the shells and inject their cardiac stomach into invertebrates they consume to receive their nutrients. After the sea star expands its cardiac stomach to initially digest food, the sea star takes this partially digested food to the pyloric stomach where further digestion occurs. From the pyloric stomach, the sea star passes the partially digested nutrients to glands called the pyloric ceca, which are considered digestive glands responsible for secreting enzymes to help absorb the vitamins and nutrients from the food. The sea star also has a small intestine that runs from the pyloric stomach to the anus, where any unabsorbed food or nutrients are excreted. When digestion occurs, the sea stars also undergo cellular respiration, which is the means of getting their energy from the food absorbed. Bean plants undergo photosynthesis to receive most of their nutrients. Since bean plants are able to produce nutritional organic substances from inorganic substances, it is an autotroph. Because of their green pigment, the bean plant takes up carbon dioxide from the air and converts this to oxygen using the sun's light energy. Chlorophyll, which is in the chloroplast of the plant, is the green pigment we see in the bean plants that converts carbon dioxide and water using the sunlight energy into oxygen and glucose. This production of glucose is a form of food for the bean plant, which is used to make energy so the plant can live and grow. The bean plant undergoes C3 photosynthesis, which means the plant has made no photosynthetic adaptations to reduce photorespiration, which is the process when the enzyme rubisco takes in oxygen instead of carbon dioxide. This is negative because rubisco converts carbon dioxide into natural carbons like glucose, which is needed for photosynthesis. And when it takes in oxygen instead, it is using light energy that isn't useful for photosynthesis. In the bean plant's C3 photosynthesis, the rubisco takes in carbon dioxide, which produces a 3-carbon compound, giving it the title C3 photosynthesis. Bean plants also have legumes, which are rich in nutrients such as calcium, iron, and zinc, which benefit the growth and health of the plant. When bean plants uptake water, they also uptake the nutrients potassium and phosphorus. This process of uptaking this water and moving it through the plant and its stem can be explained through the vascular tissues, xylem and phloem. The xylem is responsible for distributing water and dissolving minerals up through the plant from the roots to the leaves. The phloem carries food downward in the plant from the leaves to the roots. Bean plants are also capable of producing their own nitrogen because they have a symbiotic relationship with nitrogen-fixing bacteria. The nitrogen-fixing bacteria forms nodules on the bean plant's roots, converting nitrogen from the air into compounds in the soil, making the nitrogen accessible to bean plants itself, as well as nearby growing plants. This nitrogen is important for optimal photosynthesis and leaf growth. While the process of receiving their nutrients are very different, they both require a specific process so that they can obtain important vitamins and nutrients for their health and growth. Both organisms also have unique characteristics to ensure they receive the vitamins they need. In the sea star, for example, it uses its cardiac stomach and tube feet to gather their food and nutrients, and the bee plants have the nitrogen nodules on their roots to receive the nitrogen for growth. While they have these similarities, sea stars have a digestive tract, whereas bean plants use the process of C3 photosynthesis. These pathways are very different, yet accomplish the same goal for both organisms.
Gas exchange in the sea star occurs in a very unique way when compared to other organisms. It does not use organs like gills or lungs like one might think it would, but it does use its papillae. Instead, it uses a water vascular system to diffuse water through its body to obtain oxygen. To do this, the sea star uses its suction cup-like feet to pull water into its body and obtain oxygen whilst expelling carbon dioxide. This gas exchange occurs on the dorsal side of the sea star's body. The sea star also has an open respiratory system, which means that oxygen is not fixed into its organs. Rather, oxygen and the water that carries it can flow throughout the sea star's body cavity. This process does have some drawbacks, however. For example, if the sea star cannot create a strong enough current using its tube feet, then it will not get enough oxygen to respirate. Thus, it will die. Different from the sea star, the bean plant has a relatively similar gas exchange process to other plants. The bean plant uses C3 photosynthesis to obtain oxygen. In this process, sunlight stimulates the bean plant to help make its own sugars and other nutrients necessary for survival. Like many other plants, photosynthesis helps the bean plant convert carbon dioxide into oxygen. Another part of the bean plant's gas exchange process is cellular respiration, which is used to make energy. To begin cellular respiration, the bean plant needs glucose, which is made from photosynthesis and converted into ATP. Plants also use oxygen and combine it with glucose to make ATP and carbon dioxide, which is used to make necessary sugars for the bean plant. The organ that is responsible for gas exchange in the bean plant is the stomata. The stomata are located on the outermost layer of the leaf, and it is used to help facilitate photosynthesis. For example, the stomata control a process called transpiration, which is when water vapor leaves the plant. But the stomata are also responsible for allowing sunlight and other key components like carbon dioxide to enter the bean plant. The bean plant must find a way to balance its loss of water, but also maintain the uptake of light energy and carbon dioxide absorption. The guard cells help direct the stomata when to open and close, and they also help facilitate the plant's losses and gains and allows the plant to continue to survive. The differences between sea star and the bean plant are relatively easy to identify. Firstly, the sea star uses surface tension to respirate, whereas bean plants use photosynthesis. Bean plants also need to conserve water during respiration as they struggle balancing nutrient uptake with water loss. However, with sea stars, they are surrounded by water, so balancing water is not a struggle for their species. Sea stars and bean plants are also very similar in the way that they obtain oxygen. They both use pore-like holes to obtain and regulate water and to filter CO2. They also both rely on water to successfully respirate. And here are the acknowledgements, and here are the references.